Hi everyone, I'm Stan Mallow. Welcome to Paranormal Yakker. My guest in today's show is Stephen J Silva. I'll be talking with him about his book, Angel Communication Code, Responding to the Extraterrestrial Message. Stephen J Silva, welcome to Paranormal Yakker.
Thank you, Stan. It's very good to be here again with you. Very excited.
Your academic and career background, Stephen, is in civil environmental engineering and offshore marine technology. However, for the past decade, you've been conducting research and studying the science of extraterrestrial existence and extraterrestrial communication means and methods. When, Stephen, did you start to branch out from your original chosen career to explore the world of extraterrestrials and the possibility of communicating with them? And what inspired you to do that?
I like to watch all the documentaries and various shows about this tremendous search for extraterrestrials. And I got to thinking, boy, millions and millions of dollars being spent and by some of the most intelligent people on the face of the earth. Why have we not done it yet? What's missing? I started going down that path. And true to the scientific method, I harp on that a little bit. You have a theory, you make a hypothesis, go through it, make an experiment, and you report the results of that experiment. Either the hypothesis is true, or it's not true, or you gain information through the process, revise the experiment, and try it again with new information. That, I think, is one of the principal reasons for the lack of our ability to establish that communication. So I dug into it more and more, and I had 3 prime numbers in my head. I kept seeing them. I saw them everywhere. I'd go to sleep at night, they'd be there. And there was one night when I started seeing it come together in blocks of 2, 3, and 5, the first 3 prime numbers. It started to come together in a block of numbers, and then in my head, it turned into this giant block of binary code. And I know nothing about binary code. I had to teach myself what that was. So I took and analyzed that block of binary code for all the letters of the alphabet in both capital and small. Came up, I think, with 17 letters. So I took all those letters and put them into a couple of different word scrambling programs to how many words can you make 3-letter words? Because that's the driver here. With these 17 letters, it came up with 196, I believe. And I thought, well, that's not helpful. So I took it further and said, I put the words in alphabetical order, and then I divided their position 1 through whatever it was 3 times. And I looked at 2, 3, and it came out with a word corresponding to prime number 2, another one for prime number 3, another one for prime number 5, and it also gave one for prime number 7. And so the first word that corresponded to the number 2 was the Greek word eta, which happens to be in ancient Greek the number 7. So I thought that kind of made like a little loop there. And these words mean nothing to me. Eta, one was pass, one was SWY, swy, and the other one was Zac, ZAC. They mean nothing to me. So I took those one at a time, started to figure out what they meant. And all of a sudden, they started to mean something, particularly the word eta. And the book goes through all of that. It turns out that on this earth, there are 3 and only 3 islands called Eta Island. And if you look at the way they line up, one is right on the Antarctic Circle, follows the same line of longitude up to Eta Island in Bermuda, on the Bermuda Islands, and then takes a left and goes to Eta Island on the Arctic Circle in Canada. It's very, very much the same alignment of Orion's belt that you see linked to so many ancient structures, the pyramids probably being the most famous, and on and on and on. And ultimately, I wrote a book about it, my first book. So that came and went. And after that, I started thinking, I want more. I want more information. I want more proof. I want more evidence. And I thought to myself, if I was an ancient extraterrestrial guy and I wanted to implant a message somewhere, where would I do that? You think of it that way, and it seems obvious that the Bible is a great place. Messengers, angels, That's their job. They are messengers. So I started looking into that. I discovered many, many things about the Bible I never knew. And so I followed those trails, and here we are.
Did you decide on your next project being the Angel Communication Code, the book we're now talking about? And you just answered that for me. So thank you.
So really, this new angel book is a continuation on the same theme. It just kind of better substantiates my first effort, I think. And I found some new and unbelievable things that are in there too.
Angel Communication Code establishes the common thread leading to a new way to establish two-way extraterrestrial communication. What, Stephen, is that thread, and what is the role of angels and other biblically referenced beings in establishing that communication?
It really comes down to numbers. And again, it's always about 2, 3, 5, and particularly 7. And it's fascinating to find out how many references to those numbers there are in the Bible. And I can't tell you off the top of my head how many. I found out a lot of interesting things about angels themselves. One is that the whole hierarchy and structure of angels, first of all, the Bible doesn't say anything about angels in and of themselves. They're just there and they do things. But it doesn't really tell you much about them themselves. Sometime back in history, it was actually a mystic that put together this 3 triads of 3 angels and the angel choirs. There's 9, 3, 3, 3. There it is. And I found that interesting that there was so little information in the Bible about angels, and the structure of that hierarchy was put together by a person.
Scripture tells us that angels existed before humankind. That being the case, what, Stephen, are your thoughts as to what is an angel? How did angels come to be? And what is their connection with God, man, and the universe?
That's a tremendous question. And it's a question that is debated back and forth by pretty high-level theologians to this day. The question is, were they with God when it happened? Or did it happen and then he made angels? And no one knows the answer to that question. And the debate goes back and forth forever. But it's pretty clear that they were here before we were.
Many people believe that as we near the end times, you point out a flurry of angels will appear. In your opinion, Stephen, how close are we to that happening?
It's funny you asked that because that is a subject I'm tackling in a third book. And I cover that in pretty great detail. I think the indicators are there that says we're pretty close. It's linked up with several things. Largely, it's about really violence, corruption happening all over the world, the breakdown of morality all over the world and what that means now. And I don't want to get political here, but the issue of how they are indoctrinating very young children about their sexuality, little children who still believe in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy, and they're pushing that on them. Many debates on that. There's a lot of question about the morality of that. And there's arguments to be made on both sides. I get that. Those kind of things are kind of what is described in Scripture are supposed to happen. When you look at what goes on in Israel to this day, it's all right there. In terms of, I'm not going to tell you I think it's going to happen next week or next year or in 100 years, but I think we're inching closer and closer.
Mary, the mother of Jesus, is not and could not be an angel since humans cannot become angels. You point that out in your book. Jesus was the son of Mary, a human, and God, a non-human. So if you think about it, in essence, Jesus was a hybrid. How, Stephen, have people of the cloth and their parishioners reacted to you pointing that out to them?
The book hasn't been out very long, so I'm expecting people to come beat me up on that pretty good. No, if you look at Jesus himself is quoted as saying he's the descendant of the great King David, but he is not. Joseph is. It's very curious to me why people think that and why Jesus said that, because he is not a blood descendant of King David. But he makes that claim in his own words, according to the Bible. There's no explanation for that, but it's there. People don't see it. Maybe they don't want to see it. Something like that's going on. But And I talk to people I go to Bible study, and I talk to my pastor about these things, and he's like, "Geez, I never knew that." And he questioned me on it. I'm like, "Here it is, Bill. It says it right here." There's two different versions of the lineage from Jesus back to Abraham in the same book. Two different versions of it, but both of those versions agree that Jesus is not a blood heir.
That definitely got my attention when I read that in your book, and I said, wow, I found myself thinking about it, questioning things that I never thought about before. So I'm sure a lot of people are going to be talking about that when your book gets out there, widespread as it should be. In your book, you take your readers on a journey that leads directly to a scientifically based hypothesis about establishing ET communication. Can you, Stephen, give me a Reader's Digest version of that hypothesis?
I think that the hypothesis really ends up taking you to a couple places. One, the place on Earth where I think we should try and make that attempt just through the numbers. But it also, and I discovered this on the journey myself, that if you take it in steps, you look at the Star of David, geometry, triangle up, triangle down. And then I stumbled into a thing called Archangel Metatron, which is in Jewish scripture. He is said to be the archangel of life. And he has this thing called Metatron's cube that is supposed to hold everything in the universe. It's the key to everything. And you can find online depictions of it. So in the book, I find one of those, and I kind of marry those two things together. I'm building a little picture, and I didn't know where that picture was going until I got there. I go through an analysis of circles and squares, circles, big ones, little ones, and how it's built and how it all links to the 2, 3, 5 thing. And then this is actually my wife's brought this up. She's like, that looks a lot like Leonardo da Vinci's guy. I'm like, what are you talking about? The Vitruvian Man. And so I did an analysis on that and put that into the equation and put it all together. It just all marries right up so easily.
The foundation of an experiment designed to put the hypothesis you just stated to the test, one that is consistent with the universally accepted standard scientific methods, is presented in angel communication. How, Stephen, would you describe that experiment, and how would you go about executing it?
I'll start with my theory on repeat back communication. All these attempts we've made in the past are extremely complex. The scientists themselves, when they put this message together, they sent it to their peers, and they couldn't figure it out. So how the hell is someone out in outer space going to find this thing and figure it out? They're not. My theory is that, one, they left us that simple ETA message. So let's put that on a radio signal and send it back to them. Repeat back communication. That's very much what the military does. That's what animals do out in the wild. They call out and they repeat the message back, and that's how they talk to each other. And so my thinking is that something happens in that little Eta circle at the right time, at a solstice event, when on one side of the world the sun doesn't go down, and on the other side of the world it doesn't come up. And you repeat that simple message back. And the idea is that maybe that's a place where you can close the gap in distance, a wormhole type of thing. But we don't know. It's never been done before. I don't think it's probably exorbitantly expensive to do that. Put the right equipment on the proper size boat, put science people on it, and send it out there and see what happens. The point is that it's different. It's not doing the same thing again. It's doing a similar thing from a location that matters, with some justification why you would do it from that spot and why you would do it at that time, rather than just constantly listening and sending stuff up and down from random places. And you can see the book goes through again the upper and lower latitude lines of that circle. If you take it around the world, oh my God, everything important has happened there. The Egyptian pyramids that line up with Orion, the Mesoamerican pyramids that line up with all that stuff. There's something's happening there, and we just don't know what it is. And I think I've come up with a relatively simple, easy way to put it to the test. See if we can find something. It's a fishing expedition, really.
Well, that's how things get discovered with these fishing expeditions. You don't know till you try it and go to wherever that is. I'm hoping that after some people read your book who have some influence, they will go through with that experiment or ask your advice on going through it. I think that would be great.
The thing is, if you go out there, and I envision that vessel to have radio telescopes on it, I also envision it having the ability to measure undersea stuff, see if something happens to the currents, temperature, salinity, what the hell's going on at that time. Figure it out. There's many things you can measure. And the worst that happens is you find nothing. But at least you know. I bet my life on it. Something will happen. A discovery will be made of some sort.
I agree. And you've put it out to the universe. You've put it out there. And hopefully you'll be part of it because you should be.
You're kidding me, brother? I want to be on that boat. I say that now, but I don't want to be sucked onto an alien ship for the rest of my life either.
Then we'll make another book.
Yeah. So anyways, I say some risky things and I'm putting myself out there. It's an easy target. I'm an easy punching bag for some of the things I write about, but I think it needs to be said.
Should viewers of Paranormal Yacker want to buy Angel Communication Code responding to the extraterrestrial message, how, Stephen, can they do that?
They can get it. You can go to my website, etcommgroup.com, and there's links to it there. And it's actually a pretty cool website. It's morphed, I guess, into something of history lessons. I pick off little articles and highlight certain scientists and tell a story about them. There's a lot of cool stuff on that site.
Stephen J Silva, I thank you for being my guest on Paranormal Yacker. It was great yakking with you.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, everyone. This is Stan Mallow, the Paranormal Yacker. I hope you enjoyed the interview you just watched. So that you don't miss any upcoming shows, be sure to subscribe to my free YouTube channel. To do that, just press the subscribe button on your screen.